So, we are live. It is Sunday, May the 10th, and we are going for chicken biology. That is our subject tonight. Again, recapping. Why do we need to know this? Why is this important? I don't want to be a veterinarian. I don't need to know this stuff. Why do I have to know anything about their organ function and whatnot? Because the deeper your understanding, the more beneficial this will be for your farm, your decisions regarding your farm, and your fowl. The more you understand, the more you're able to apply to almost every scenario and every situation. So, be a good thing. Jay Chili will join us once he gets his cell phone situation straightened out. But we are going to go ahead and begin with the simplistic chart that we have here below. We're also going to pull ourselves up another visual, not visual, another visual. Well, not quite. We're just going to keep it simple. Simple. So, first things first. Knowing the internal part of a bird will also help knowing how to treat it while you're at a barbecue. That is very, very true. So there's a lot of things in here that you might learn. And seriously, that's how we progress. That's how we move forward and so on. So there's a lot of things in here that can be extremely beneficial. And I really believe that some folks will pick up a couple of little things that maybe they didn't even know. And there are certain things that, I end up picking up that I didn't know. I do spend a lot of time researching little stuff like this because I enjoy it and I like to further my understanding. But not all of us are, into the same things, and that's fine. That's why we do the show, to have fellowship, to share some information, and, just try to help out and give back to the community and give the community a place to come together and just have conversations and maybe learn a thing or two. What do they say? The hen put out most of the genes. A lot of guys, myself included, the female seems to pass on more than 60% of herself into the male offspring. I don't have any definitive proof, but I am a firm believer in the female passing on a lot of her characteristics to her male offspring. You're helping out the generation so well. Thank you for keeping a dead game alive. You are very welcome, Triple C. Thanks for being here. Thanks for all the support, everybody. It's been amazing. And I'm glad to be here. Chili is also glad to be here. I know he is. And we're just going to keep moving forward. We're going to keep doing our thing. So, let's start off with this simplistic little chart here below. This is the digestive system, the digestive tract. We will get into a little more of this, a little bit later on. But obviously, this is kind of rudimentary, right? It's really simple. So, food goes in the beak, goes in the mouth, right? And then it goes down the esophagus. That's a weird spelling for esophagus, but hey. Food goes down the throat, goes down the esophagus. And I'm assuming that most of us know. Food goes into the crop. Any tips on keeping chickens healthy and putting weight on them? Save that question for the end. We'll field a few questions. Essentially, without getting really deep into it, it's all proper nutrition. Nutrition transcends life. Seriously. No joke. Not a detailed answer. It's probably not the answer a lot of people want to hear. But seriously, your nutrition is responsible for all of that. Muscle growth, development, so on. So, food goes down the throat, in the esophagus, and into the crop. So, for those that don't know exactly what the crop does, it's very, very simple. Okay, as the food is ingested, birds do have saliva. The saliva do contain a few little digestive enzymes and so on. So the food is a slight bit wet, and it goes into the crop. Okay, think of the crop as a storage container, a lunchbox, if you will, or a Tupperware box. The feed is held into the crop. That's it. That's what the crop is utilized for. It's basically a little storage container, right? So the food does soften a tiny bit while it's in the crop, and it does have some of those enzymes working on it, but not too many. We move into the Provin triculus. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that right. J Chili is here. Moving into the Provin triculus, or the stomach. What's up, buddy?
What's up? What's up?
Oh, just kicking it off here. We're talking about the digestive tract and just simply how it works. And I've got the little rudimentary diagram here on the screen. Food goes in the mouth, a couple of enzymes in the saliva, goes down the throat, gets stored into the crop, which is essentially a lunchbox, just a Tupperware container, if you will, and moves to the proventriculus, which is just a fancy name for the stomach. And the stomach is where a lot of the digestive enzymes and acid and stuff like that starts to really soften the feed and break it down a little bit before passing it to the gizzard. And obviously, lots and lots of folks are familiar with the gizzard. And we will get highly into gizzard function and whatnot a little bit later on. For the time being, we're just discussing okay. Hopefully that didn't screw us all up and we're still streaming very well. You guys are going to have to give me some feedback. Hopefully we're not frozen, this, that, and the other. The rain is kind of messing with the internet here this evening. So anyway, food goes from the stomach into the gizzard. Okay? And so when we enter the gizzard is a very, very rigid, strong muscle where we store grit. And the grit is basically our teeth, because chickens don't have teeth. So the gizzard muscle is what will contract and whatnot, and those stones that are stored within the gizzard will further break down that food and whatnot that's been softened and move it into the small intestine. So after we get past that function and whatnot, we move through the intestinal tract. The small intestine is basically where a lot of the food, a lot of the things within the food, I was getting ready to skip over that, is absorbed. A lot of the nutrients, this, that, and the other from the food. Looks like we're having some minor connectivity issues, so we're going to cut out and we're going to reboot for any of those who can hear me, and we're going to come right back at it, hopefully with a much better connection.
What's going on with the connection?
I guess it's just the weather. It seems to do that. Is it stable for you?
Yeah.
Oh, well, if it's stable, we're going to keep rocking and rolling.
Yeah, I'm just letting you take this away. So don't worry about me. Do your thing.
Oh, you're good.
I'm just chilling.
You're good. Recapping. Everybody says it's good. All right, we're going to keep rolling with it then. So, food down the throat, into the crop, into the stomach, which is also noted as the proventriculus, and the gizzard. Gizzard stores grit, acts as a mechanism of teeth. We break down the food a little further, move it into the small intestine. The small intestine is where a lot of the nutrition starts to be absorbed, okay? Your amino acids, your proteins, your fats, your sugars, the carbohydrates, vitamins and minerals, even water. Your moisture starts to get absorbed, a little bit there in the small intestine. And then, we have these two little pockets called the ceca, just past the small intestine and whatnot. They're basically where your probiotics live. They're where your good gut bacteria live. Think of them as just like little storage pockets in the intestinal tract. So those bacteria, those living cultures, they have colonized that area, of the gut. And so their job is to further help break down the food to absorb nutrition. After we move, through the small intestine and food is passing through the ceca area and whatnot, we move into the large intestine. The large intestine is where the food contents the moisture really gets sucked out of it. That's where it kind of gets dried out and so on as the excrement is moving forth through the digestive tract. So it's being dried out, it's being compacted, and then we get down to the cloaca. The cloaca is where the ureates are mixed from the kidneys, and the ureates are the little white part, the little creamyish white part. It should be dry when it comes out of the vent, but it's the white part of the dropping. Okay, that greenish and brownish portion of the dropping, that comes from our grains and our food intake, and the white part is the ureate, because chickens don't make urine like a traditional mammal. They're poultry. So nonetheless, large intestine dries the food out a little bit more, compacts it, moves into the cloaca, which is also the area where the reproductive organs are housed, and it gets mixed with the ureates from the kidneys and then excremented through the vent. Quick recap. Food goes in the mouth, down the throat, into the crop where it softens just a tiny bit, and it is stored. Moves into the proventriculus, which is the stomach, moves into the stomach where it is further softened and breaking down a little bit from the enzymes and whatnot in the digestive stomach. Then it is moved forth into the gizzard. And the gizzard, of course, is where we house all of our grit and everything. And so we grind things up and we start to really break down the food. Food moves into the small intestine. It's broken down further, lots and lots of nutrition absorbed. The ceca is where all the good bacteria live. And then it's passed to the large intestine, where the remaining food is further dried out, all the moisture absorbed and compacted, moves into the cloaca, where it mixes with the ureate portion from the kidneys, and then out the vent. How you doing there, Miss Wilburn? Good to see ya. Any questions? Jay Chili.
No, sir. Take it away. I'm just letting you rock this one.
Rock it and roll it, then.
So, but you're saying that the liver has a lot more to do with what people think than just purifying toxins.
Indeed it does. That'll be our first topic, moving forth past the simplistic, digestive tract of your chicken. Knowing how the food moves, what it's got to go through, this, that, and the other, I believe that's beneficial. And so the liver, the one. All right, let's see. I need to be able to get my images and everything straight. This is for later, so we're not going to use this one just yet. That will be a female's reproductive organ cycle type deal. So first things first here. We're going to get us a picture of a liver. For those that have purchased the ebook, you will certainly have already seen this image. For those that haven't, maybe this will give you a little perspective. So, let us rotate and then size down a little bit.
Okay, wait. Before you say anything, in the comments, guys, I want to hear what a few people think. So, which one is a healthy liver and which one is an unhealthy liver? Did you already give the answer to that, John?
Nope.
Yeah.
Nope. I just hid
All right,
the
guys,
answer.
Which one's healthy and which one's unhealthy?
We enjoy the participation, guys. We enjoy participation. Which liver do you believe is the healthy, normal, functional liver? Trigger said the one on the left is healthy. Left said Roadrunner.
Yeah, Roadrunner said left. Ain't the one on the right though? Ain't that a nice tan, pretty color?
It's beautiful gold.
I bet you most people that feed what they feed, a lot of people. I'm not trying to give the answer away, but I'm just saying if they cut their roosters, if they dissect them when they die prematurely, I'm sure they're going to see a lot of one of these and the other. Ain't that right, John?
I would be willing to bet a large number of folks would see livers similar to this in their brood fowl. Upon death, I would imagine there's quite a few. And it just is what it is. It's not even necessarily their fault. They're at the mercy of what they're able to buy. Some of them are pushing them, in that direction on their own, making conscious decisions that are bad for them. But not everyone. All right. So, we got a little bit of participation out of a couple of folks. It is most certainly the liver on the left. It is a normal, healthy, functional liver. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. That is our answer. The liver on the left. That deep, dark, red mahogany type color, that is what you are looking for. That is normal. That is a healthy, functional liver. And a lot of livers, this example is pretty extreme, okay? So you might not see this liver in your fowl, but you might see a liver that is not quite as deep dark red. Maybe it's a little pinkish, and it's kind of got a little hue of yellow or tan in it. Those are still failed livers. This one is just completely extreme. But noted within the ebook is an image of hearts, kidneys, and livers, and you can kind of see like a middling stage of liver failure, coming forth in your chickens. So even at old age, when they pass away, their liver should still look relatively healthy. Some people think they're feeding good because it looks good. I'd say that there are a ton of people that think they are feeding good just because their feed looks fantastic. And it has zero to do with it. Absolutely zero. What would you use to clean the liver? There's one of the best things for them is green grass. And everybody thinks, well, green grass is nutritious and this and that and blah, blah, blah. They got to have grass because grass is nutritious. No, it's not. It is, but in very, very, very minimal amounts. Very slight. Jay Chili, would you like to explain what grass really does?
Yeah, so a lot of people want to say that grass has like all this nutritional value and stuff. The main things grass does, guys, is it's chlorophyll. So it's pretty much for detoxing. That's it. Detoxing has a little bit of vitamin K, guys, but mostly the chlorophyll in it is just a detox for toxins.
All right. Yes. So, the chlorophyll within the green grass, that is what helps us to detox. So, beyond that, the bile, everything with the bile gets stored up from the liver and whatnot. So, the bile dropping, the cecal dropping, if you don't feed them or you're feeding them out, that nasty chocolate, creamy brownish, sometimes it's dark brown, sometimes kind of looks like tar, stinks. The secondary dropping, that dropping is the bile, the toxins and whatnot exiting the body. So you can do several things, right? Two of the biggest things that you can do for them to try to cleanse that liver are going to be to put them on fresh green grass to help them detox, and then just basically not feed them. Let the body empty. Let it purge those toxins. But if we go back to feeding the same type of stuff that we were feeding and we're loading them up, it's cleaning them out once in a while is going to be minimal, right? Because that liver is going to be working no matter what. So you either make a conscious choice to do what's right by them and to help them out and to help them thrive, or you make a choice not to do that, and you'll suffer the consequences. So why is the liver extremely important? Well, the liver is one of the most important organs in the body because it acts like basically a large filtration system, a chemical processing plant, something of that nature. It also acts in nutrition storage and this, that, and the other. It is especially important in active birds with high metabolisms. And guess what? Gamefowl are active birds with high metabolisms. So, the liver is essentially very important within our gamefowl. I hope we don't have another connection problem. I just got the warning. So anyway, the liver, extremely important for multiple reasons, okay? It's basically a large filtration system. It's a storage center for some nutrition, and it's a nutrition factory. It sorts out all the nutrition and whatnot for the body. Catfish pellets and cat food and dog food is some of the worst stuff you can add to your feed. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. If you're feeding that stuff daily as part of your yard mix, you're doing damage. You can argue all you want, but biologically, start doing autopsies, start, checking things out, you'll see the damage. So, all right. So, starting off with one of the first things, processing nutrition and whatnot. What does the liver do? Well, the liver is responsible for processing carbohydrates into usable energy. Okay? It also is partially responsible for processing some amino acids and some proteins. One of the biggest things that the liver does take in and handle will be fats. The fats, cholesterol, carbohydrates. It also helps to distribute this nutrition that it's taking in, helps distribute it throughout the body. So when we're taking this nutrition in and things are being broken down, the liver is filtering out the stuff that's not really usable. It's filtering out harmful stuff, toxins, this, that, and the other, and it's storing the nutrition that it needs, and it's going to distribute that to the body. So it, like I said earlier, mentioning the fat. Fat is one of the biggest things that the liver, does. It processes fat, this, that, and the other. So it does have to store some of the fat, right? Because fats, carbohydrates, they carry energy. So we do have to store some of that. Not only does it store, a lot of people think of fat as like gut fat. Okay, that's one form of fat. There's also fatty contents, oils if you will, within your bloodstream. So that gets distributed and whatnot throughout the body. So the liver doesn't just regulate toxins and whatnot. It does aid in, sending nutrition throughout the body. And it does help to regulate the body's overall condition. So how often should you clean out? Lots of people do it once a week. I don't have a clean up day or a clean out day. It's not a brag. I'm not knocking on anybody. It's because my nutrition is where it should be. So I don't skip a day. So if your nutrition a little subpar, or you're worried about it, or maybe you want to try something once a week, we'll probably do it. But that doesn't mean I'm not feeding. I probably cut their feed back a little bit on Saturday, and then Sunday, let them go through most of the day and then feed them before they go to bed. That way they're not missing out on a meal. Feeding too many supplements and vitamins will burn up the liver. Yes, it will. Yes, it will. Liver, kidneys, everything else. So it has a limit, right? It has a limit. Guess what else the liver does? It is extremely helpful and plays a big role in helping produce the egg yolk for the hens. The egg yolk is a lot of fat in it, energy sources for those baby chicks. So it plays a big role in that. Too much dietary fat, too many toxins, excess calories, Taking in too much carbohydrates, too much energy, can lead to fatty liver. That's one example right here in the picture. So again, we're loading them up on all these byproducts, loading them up with tons of fats, this, that, and the other. We're actively pushing them down the road to liver failure. So what else does the liver do? Well, we're talking about detoxifying, right? So it filters harmful substances from the bloodstream, from the body. Toxins, medications, certain things that come from medications, excess minerals, and waste byproducts. Okay? A lot of your feeds, they're going to say animal byproducts, this kind of byproduct, plant-based byproducts, grain byproducts. Byproducts are bad. Okay? For the most part, they're unusable. It's just filler. It's a nice way of saying crap. We have to put it in there, but it's crap. And if they labeled it crap, you wouldn't buy it. So, it looks like, at least for the moment, we've lost Mr. J. Chili. Hopefully he will be right back. We shall see. We'll tries it. But, anyway, moving forth, we already know that the liver creates bile. Bile does help digest fats and whatnot within the intestinal tract. So, it is important, but bile is toxic. So, the liver, I said, helps with nutrition, this, that, and the other. So, what does the liver actually store? The liver stores and distributes vitamin A, vitamin D, a lot of B-complex vitamins, including B12, iron, copper, and then glycogen, the byproduct of your carbohydrates, stored sugar energy. So, this storage system doesn't just help with moving nutrition throughout the body, it aids in stress and heavy exertion. When they're working really hard or they're involved in highly demanding physical activities, liver health is key. And loading that liver up with the nutrition that it needs is key. Yes, sir. Livers ain't that big, though. They are huge in the biological scene. Huge. Absolutely huge part of your chicken's overall function. And tons of people are ignoring their liver function, and they're actively doing things to harm it, whether they realize it or they don't. That's just the truth of the matter. My chickens have mites. What's the best way to get rid of them? Spray your facilities with insecticides and whatnot. Yeah, I understand. I was just messing with you, Eddie. I was kind of getting there. They are small. They're not big at all, right? Chicken livers are relatively small. They're not large. Yep. But here in the photo, you can see the liver on the right that has failed, has fatty liver syndrome. It's 40%, maybe even 50% larger than a healthy, functional liver. And obviously the coloration is just awful. But the liver plays a huge role for being such a relatively physically small organ. So the liver also supports good immune system. A stressed out, overloaded, overworked liver can weaken your chicken's resistance to diseases. Common signs of liver problem are going to include pale comb, pale wattles, pale head, so it's not always worms, right? Poor stamina, imagine that. Weight loss or obesity, it can go in either direction, right? Green droppings, reduced appetite, weakness, and, in severe cases like this one below, sudden death. Sudden death. You use basil, thyme, oregano, garlic, chili flakes, paprika in your daily feed. Boy, you are seasoning them jokers up. Seasoning them up. So, common causes of liver stress. Terrible feed. Okay? Really, really poor feed. Too many byproducts. Overuse of certain medications. Heat stress. Obesity. too much fat in the diet, and the big one, too much iron or copper. And guess what red cell is loaded up on? Iron. So, iron toxicity is a real thing, okay? And it affects your liver. Now, we talked about some of the biological functions of the liver, what it does, and so on. So we've talked about some of the adverse things and what the effects are, what you can kind of see from a liver that is not functioning very well. Okay? A healthy liver is essential to a chicken's energy output. Number one, a healthy liver stores all those vitamins and stuff, helps the body retain all that stuff, moves that stuff around. Energy. A healthy liver that is getting fed very well takes that nutrition, moves it throughout the body, and stores that energy, and the energy output is fantastic. It is their normal biological function. So, muscle maintenance. The liver plays a role in them chickens keeping their body on them, maintaining that muscular structure. Game fowl are very closely related to their ancestral roots as jungle fowl, and they are natural-born, built survivors. They are built for their lifestyle. So feather quality is another one. The liver plays a role in feather quality. Digestion, of course, overall vitality, the lifespan of the chicken, right? How they're able to function every day, and so on. Manuel, it could mean lots and lots of different things. This is not going to be the show for that subject. So, the liver is probably one of the most important organs within the body itself. Okay? Number one, it filters all the stuff throughout the body. Filters toxins, this, that, and the other. But, plays a huge role in converting carbs into usable energy, breaking down proteins and stuff. It handles your fats and cholesterol, and it distributes nutrition throughout the body. And a healthy, functional liver is essential for maintaining their muscular structure, their energy output and longevity, digestion, and their overall vitality, their overall life expectancy. So, can you recover from a bad liver? It depends on how far gone it is. If the liver is seeing significant damage, there's no coming back from it. When you do permanent damage, it is what it is. Liver transplant. That's why it's essential to learn more about your nutritional needs and to give them what they need from day one. There are so many guys that say, well, I don't care about this and this, that, and the other, because they only have to live 2 years anyway, so I don't care. Don't you want them to be at their peak when they are 2 years old? Because if your liver is not at its peak, your birds won't be either. And that's not my opinion. That's biology. Because we're holding them back for that very reason. You know? So the liver plays a big role, not just in filtering all the toxins and whatnot, plays a lot of roles in their muscle, their maintenance of their body and their energy output. Stores a lot of vitamins, moves a lot of nutrition around the body. Alfalfa is good for chickens. Manuel, alfalfa is good for chickens. So, moving on from the liver, let's see if we can pull up an image of, let's see. There we go. Boom. Let's pull up the image of kidneys. So, is honey mixed with game feed good? Honey is essentially just a carbohydrate. You don't have to have it. With a properly balanced diet, this, that, and the other, you don't need it. You don't need, everybody is overcomplicating their feed to try and find this magical energy sort of solution, and they don't even understand how their chicken's body functions. They've got this idea that they got to have this, and we do this for that, and we give them this for that, but they don't understand how their bird's body works. Literally, all you have to do is have good stock from good brood pens, and then give them what they need to thrive. Trigger will back me up on that statement. That's all that need be said about that. The gentleman in the chat. So, moving forth into the kidneys, right? We talked about the liver. So let's move on into the kidneys. Kidneys do a lot more than just, make the ureate portion of waste, okay? They're one of the most important organs in the body for keeping it chemically balanced and, waste-free, toxicity levels down, things of that nature. So, kidney's main function, right? Filters the bloodstream, this, that, and the other, removes nitrogen waste that's created from protein metabolism. Excess protein is filtered by the kidneys. So when we're feeding them too much, too much protein, okay, number one, we're doing physical harm to the kidneys. Number two, we're creating excess nitrogen levels, which becomes ammonia. So, the kidneys are responsible for that, and they're responsible for separating the ureate during the digestive process, right? So they don't make liquid urine like mammals and stuff like we do. They don't. The ureate, as I described earlier, is the white portion of the dropping, the white cap, whatnot, if you will. So the kidneys do that. They also help to regulate the bird's water balance, okay? Kidneys control how much water is retained or expelled so the bird doesn't dehydrate, right? Especially in harsh conditions, excessive heat, stress, things of that nature. So the kidneys don't just filter water intake and things like that, right? Kidneys actually help the bird to retain or expel water depending on the body's needs. Excuse me. So that's a pretty significant function, right? So again, you would want healthy kidneys. That's what you're going to want. Maintaining electrolytes. Sodium, potassium, calcium, salt. Proper electrolyte balance. Everybody knows, well, you got to give them electrolytes. You give them this, make sure you give them electrolytes. Give them electrolytes there in the summertime. Why are you giving electrolytes? Proper electrolyte balance is critical because of muscle contraction, muscle function, cramping, so on. Potassium's a big one for that, right? Calcium plays a small role there too. Nerve function, stamina, and recovery. That's why electrolytes are important, right? And the kidneys are responsible for that. So we want good, healthy, functional kidneys, okay? Excess proteins, certain medications, minerals, toxins, they can stress the kidneys and cause permanent irreversible damage. In game fowl, overloading certain proteins, antibiotics, and sulfa-based drugs, dehydration, too much mineral supplementation can cause irreversible kidney damage, tissue damage, and raise your uric acid levels. What does that mean? That means your kidneys will start failing, and they will start producing much more ammonia in their droppings. And this is, essentially, they're killing themselves. They're not necessarily killing themselves, but it's making for a very hard life. You know what I mean? So the kidneys are very essential for a lot of things. Mainly, helping to filter out proteins, remove nitrogen waste and whatnot, things of that nature. Obviously, the digestive process, they're part of that. But, They're very essential to the birds, water retention, whether they keep the water or they expel it, this, that, or the other. And, like other animals, your bird's kidneys can help regulate blood volume and circulation through hormone signaling and fluid control. That is something I had no idea about. I had no idea. I was like, how do the kidneys have anything to do with the circulatory system? Well, again, it's controlled through hormones and so on and so forth. So hormones can obviously increase, decrease heart rate, so on and so forth. So supporting healthy kidney performance and whatnot, healthy kidneys will help you to retain your hydration, your electrolytes, and so on, which is essential for your bird's endurance, muscle efficiency, overall lifestyle, life function, and their appetite. It makes them feel good when they feel healthy. Poor kidney function, onset kidney failure, so on and so forth, usually shows up in the sign of weakness, sometimes swelling in certain areas of the body, dehydration, reduced responses, lower stamina, so on and so forth. Like they don't move very well, right? They got muscle cramps and stuff going on. That's part of dehydration. So kidneys, very, very, very important. If my game fowl gets skinny out of nowhere, does it need a dewormer? If it has worms, it does. I mean, you have to, if you are going to own and keep and whatnot game fowl, you are going to have to learn to diagnose when they have an issue and, try to pinpoint what is going on. You're going to have to further your knowledge about that. Mr. J. Chili, welcome back. Moving on to the lungs. And for this part, we might as well just throw up this image here.
All right, I'm back. Had some technical difficulties, but we're back up and running.
Rocking and rolling. Rocking and rolling. All right. Let's see. This is going to be a big one. So, we're going to try to shift this around as best as possible and whatnot. And we'll move it where we need it, when we need it. So, we're going to talk about the bird's lungs. The lungs are tucked in nearly against the rib cage, very tight in the back. They're going to be hard to get to, and this example here doesn't showcase them very, very well, but the lungs are a huge, huge part of your gamecock. Okay, you need to understand not just, that the lungs take in air and this, that, and the other. They help with the respiratory system, oxygen absorption for the bloodstream, and so on. But you need to understand how they function, because they are different. Your game fowl, your birds, are different from us as humans. Significantly different. I went over this earlier at a quick recap. Human lungs, we have a diaphragm system, and your game fowl do not. They have air sacs. And human lungs, if you think about them, we have, our lungs are kind of like flexible little airbags. They will inflate and deflate. Versus, your game fowl, the lungs are actually kind of rigid tissue. They are hard tissue. And they've got air sacs in them, 9 to be exact. And our breathing, the way that we breathe, is considered a tidal system. In other words, we take a breath in and then a breath out. Versus your game fowl, chickens, your birds, they use a flow-through system. In other words, fresh air is moving across the lungs continuously. Even during an exhale, oxygen-rich air is still moving through your bird's lungs. This, in general, means that your game fowl's lungs are much more efficient than your own. So the airflow for your bird's lungs enters the throat, right? They breathe in through the throat, and air moves into the rear air sacs. Air moves forward throughout their lungs and it exits through the front air sacs. So it actually takes 2 full breaths for 1 packet of air to pass completely through your bird. So they have oxygen, they have air within their lungs all the time. What are some of the lung infections that gamefowl get? Well, some of the most common ones we're going to talk about are going to be CRD, which is Mycoplasma gastrulum, and then coryza, which is basically the common cold. And the reason that your birds are so sensitive and susceptible to things like that is because of their lungs and the way they function, the way they take air in and whatnot. That's why they're so sensitive to dust and dander and mold and ammonia, stuff like that, because those particles, that air is constantly moving through their system, and that's why they are so susceptible to that. So we already know, very simply, right? We already know that the lungs are good for oxygen within the body. Okay, CO2 is a waste byproduct, and oxygen, intake is conducted through the lungs. It also helps your birds, especially during times of heat, to reduce their body temperature a little bit. It helps them with body temperature regulation. Okay, oxygen content of the blood, this, that, and the other, helps to regulate your blood levels pH, especially during times of stress, heavy exertion, heat, intense activities. So it helps to balance out their body, having good, healthy, functional lungs. So vocalization, of course. The voice box, whatnot, the crow, is powered by the lungs. So the lungs work together with multiple air sacs, like we described earlier, and they maintain a constant airflow throughout the bird's system. What is the reason they blow air on the back of the rooster? Most folks do it to help them alleviate stress. So, are red quails any good? It depends. The name tag don't mean a damn thing. It's a chicken. And it's a good chicken or it's not a good chicken. I mean, you throw whatever label on it you want. It doesn't change the chicken, no matter what the name is. So, yeah, some of them are, some of them are not. There's your answer. A real answer. One that you can take to the bank instead of, oh yeah, or oh no. So, as humans, like I said, we have the tidal system. We have a diaphragm and stuff, and our lungs are very flexible and pliable. We inhale and air enters, and we exhale and air leaves the same path that it came in, right? So fresh air partially mixes with some of the expelled air that leaves our body. Versus your birds, fresh air keeps moving across the lungs almost continuously. Even when they're exhaling, oxygen-rich air is still in their lungs and it's moving throughout their body. A simplified, version is that of which I explained earlier. They pull the air in, it moves through the rear air sacs and towards the front before it exits the body, and it takes about 2 breaths for your bird to expel that air. Feeder makes the chicken, in my opinion. It's got a lot to do with it. Right, Mr. Chili?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm still here. Still here.
Good. Good. Did you know that your birds don't function, their lungs are nowhere near the same as our own?
Explain.
Just did explain. For us, for human beings, seriously, for human beings, our lungs are kind of like airbags, right? They're soft, they're pliable, they fill up, and then they contract. And in chickens, however, their lungs are more rigid. The muscles are hardened, almost like the gizzard, and they're full of air sacs, 9 air sacs to be exact. So for us, we take a deep breath in and then out So air comes in and leaves the same way, and some of the air that we breathe in is mixing with the air that we're letting out. That's just how our lung systems function. Your chickens, however, when they take a breath of fresh air, it moves through the back of the air sacs and starts moving its way through the front of the air sacs, and it takes 2 full breaths for them to completely exhale. So they have air moving through their lungs constantly. It's never not in there.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
Yep. I was trying to do 3 things at once, guys. I'm sorry. I got to, not trying to change the subject, but I got big on that Walmart Plus, the Walmart delivery, and they're bringing my groceries, and I'm trying to, but okay, yeah.
Sidetracked. So that's what this does, and essentially what it does, it makes their lung system way more efficient than our own. Way, way more efficient. I mean, they are able to handle periods of high exertion and stress and stuff like we cannot imagine. Okay, they
Right.
function at a much higher level. So that is amazing. The drawback is because of the way their lungs function and how it's never really kind of a cut-off source of air. This is what makes them extremely susceptible to respiratory problems, mold, dust, dander, ammonia. That's why they end up with respiratory diseases, airborne illnesses, because the lungs absorb air very efficiently, including toxic fumes and gases. So, healthy lungs can help oxygen levels rapidly recover after periods of harsh exertion. They can tolerate high activity levels, those go hand in hand. They can maintain intense muscle function because your muscles are utilizing a lot of oxygen, right? So healthy lungs will keep that oxygen going through your blood, part of your blood flow. So this kind of goes hand in hand with the liver, producing these trace minerals and stuff, flowing them throughout the body, your hemoglobin and stuff. Think of hemoglobin as kind of a little bus, a transport bus for oxygen throughout the bloodstream, right? You don't want to overdo it. If you overdo it, all those buses are going to end up crashing, and you're going to end up with all these buses that need to be moved out of the way, and that's called toxicity, iron toxicity. So they help birds during periods of stress. Their lungs are great for that. That's why they can tolerate heat really, really well and perform even when oxygen is in very high demand.
So, question.
Go for it.
So, when people say chickens have so many lungs and air sacs, is that true, or are they all essentially the same thing?
It is true. Biologically, most of your fowl, with the exception of a few, just the same as like silkies have feathers, but they're a little bit different, and there are breeds of fowl that have 2 spurs. I think the Iam Samanis are one of them that can have 4 spurs, 2 on each leg. There's breeds of chickens that have 5 toes instead of 4, 3 in a prop toe. Some of them have 4 in a prop toe. So genetically speaking, I'm not certain, but I am very certain that most of your poultry, including your game fowl, they have 9 air sacs, and that's just a biological quality.
So, there's not a difference in air sacs and lungs.
Well, the lungs.
It's all the same.
Yeah. The air sacs are part of their lung. Like our lungs are basically air bags with a little bit of filtration system inside of them. Their lungs, think of them as having a lot of air sacs with a hardened casing around them, and air just kind of flows around inside there.
Gotcha. So it's like air sacs inside of a big lung thing.
Correct.
Like where the air goes.
And we have a
That makes
diaphragm. We have a diaphragm in our system, so we can cut off airflow. We can stop. They cannot. They don't have a diaphragm. Their system is a free flow system. Air never stops moving through their system. Our breathing method is called the tidal system.
Interesting.
Yep.
So is that why? I better not ask that.
That's why they can recover during periods of really high stress and high exertion workloads and so on. So healthy lungs are critical. That's why if lungs end up with a bad disease or they have damage, scar tissue, so on, that's why they don't function very well if they're in a period of high stress or energy exertion, something of that nature.
So is this why I'll say it like is that why when there's fluid, when a rooster is rattled, say he's got water in his lungs, he's got
Mm-hmm.
fluid in his lungs, and he can recover, but he can still breathe. So instead of hitting what people would think, or instead of one of two lungs being affected, like in people, it could have been just one of the air sacs that's affected rather
Correct.
than everything.
That
So
is
that's why he
correct.
can still breathe and function.
Yep. Yep. If we have a punctured lung,
Right.
we are in big trouble, like dire need. Big trouble. These fowl, however, they're designed to go through nature in a combative life form, in a lifestyle. That's just how they were thousands of years ago. They are genetically
Right.
designed for this and to be able to survive conflict. And so, yeah, they can lose one or multiple air sacs and still live. But depending on the extent of the damage, maybe not. So, different styles of, lungs, different breathing. Obviously, lungs are kind of a given. They are, but they're not. So there are very subtle differences. Not subtle. There's extreme differences in the lungs of us humans versus the lungs of your fowl. Okay? And so big difference. Big difference there. Why can't I make this line go away? So, pretty big difference. Can chickens get herpes? Technically, yes.
It's a virus.
Yeah,
They can.
yeah. Mine doesn't crow anymore. He likes to tries, but it's so faint. I mean, he could have damaged vocal cords. He could have scarring in his lungs. He could have something blocking his throat, something like canker. Canker doesn't just live in and around the mouth. It actually does get into the throat. It's respiratory, but I don't know what it is. Most of your respiratory issues can be taken care of via some form of antibiotics. Usually Tylosin, some form of Tylosin, or erythromycin. Those two are highly effective. VetRx is not going to have what you need. You're going to need a stronger antibiotic.
Veterex is overrated. And I
It,
know, I just said something. I went against the chicken community. It works for opening them up and helping them breathe, but that is not going to cure serious diseases. Like
correct.
when something needs an antibiotic, you have to give an antibiotic. Now, there's times when herbal remedies will help, and I'm all about all natural. If you can avoid an antibiotic, avoid it at all costs because it destroys their digestive tract. It takes away their gut bacteria, how they digest food and nutrients. It does all that. But there's times when you need an antibiotic. So just be mindful of that and don't try to. You can actually make it worse by prolonging it by trying to do natural remedies. And I'm not getting off on a rant. I just wanted to say that. So there's always times when certain things are necessary.
Absolutely. There's some, herbal remedies, home remedies, and stuff you could do for respiratory problems, but you're going to have to catch it early. If you don't, and you're not monitoring your birds, you're going to have to go to something that is much, much stronger. Gentleman was asking, like, what respiratory antibiotics? I said Tylosin or erythromycin. Tylosin can be found in Tylen 50, LA 200. It can be found in Amtil 500. Erythromycin is a drug that you can get from vet places. You can get some erythromycin you can get from like places that sell fish products because erythromycin is something you can use to treat fish tanks. So erythromycin is highly effective for respiratory issues. um, Guys, asking a bunch of questions, like, hey, how many grams a day should I be feeding, and blah, 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 and so on and so forth. Save those to the end, guys. We'll try to field a few of those because we're a little more than halfway into this live stream, and we've still got quite a bit to try and cover for you guys. So we're going to do our best. We're going to keep rocking and rolling. So we talked about the digestive tract, which is right here on the screen, very simple. Talked about the liver function and how that essentially is one of the most important things within the body structure. It does much more than filter toxins, and it is responsible for a lot of biological functions, including energy output and distribution of nutrients throughout the body. We talked about the kidneys and what they do, how they regulate water and break down nutrition, and failing kidneys are a really sort of a crisis type situation. So you want to keep them very healthy. They do much more than just filter protein and calcium and so on. So now we've talked about the lungs and the significant difference between your bird's lungs and your human lungs, and understanding that your bird's lungs are highly, highly efficient and they work very, very well, and that's how they're designed, versus your own lungs. And so it's a great advantage, but at the same time, because of the way that they take in air, they are very susceptible to even the smallest particles, and that's why it's essential to maintain your birds and their lung functions. Yes, birds can absolutely go into shock, 1000%. So, moving forward. All right. We're going to talk about the gizzard. Down here, you can see
Gizzard.
the gizzard. Now, everybody knows birds' gizzards got to be working. What is a gizzard, Mr. Chili, and why do birds even have it?
Okay, I got the big screen. I don't want to break my camera. Let me try to turn it on.
Don't do anything risky.
Yes. So, what was the question? What is the gizzard and how what?
What is the gizzard, and essentially, why do birds have a gizzard?
So, the gizzard is an organ that we all know, and the gizzard is responsible for the breaking down and digestion of food. Correct, John?
Yes, absolutely. I couldn't get to the mute key because if I don't mute it, you'll get a
I've
little
seen you trying.
you'll get a little feedback, and I try to keep the recorded versions very nice and clean. So I've got a hotkey where I can and bring it right back so quick.
So, the gizzard is responsible for digesting food. And what is in the gizzard that helps them digest food and nutrients? Grit, right? So, chickens do have a stomach. Chickens do have a stomach, but in a sense, it's kind of like our stomach. Okay, it's responsible for grinding up the food and getting it to the point where the body and the liver and the intestines can absorb the nutrients, right? So that's pretty much the primary purpose, guys, is to just grind up and break down the food that they eat.
Yep. So they have the stomach. Of course, their stomach is right before the gizzard, but it's not like our stomach, right? It does have some acids and stuff in it, but it's nothing like our own. What we have that they don't have, you already covered, we have teeth. Chickens don't. So their teeth are stored internally in the gizzard, in the grit. So that's where all of that stuff kind of takes place. So the gizzard is a very, very strong muscular organ. Okay, and it actually has a lining inside of it. It's lined with something that's called a koilin, Koilin, and it's a layer that protects the muscle from abrasion damage and acid damage, right? Because the acidic qualities of certain foods and then the stomach acid, some of that stuff gets passed, with the feed and so on and so forth. So, literally, the gizzard has this little coating internally that helps it to survive the grit and the acidic quality and so on and so forth. So this is why grit is completely essential, So it blends the feed with, saliva, the water, the digestive enzymes, the juices. It helps to control your feed flow. Okay, it regulates how quickly feed passes through a rooster. I mean, it's kind of a simple concept, right, Mr. Chili? Because if a gizzard is active and it's full of grit and it's doing everything it's supposed to do, then we're breaking down our feed efficiently and passing it through the digestive tract.
Right. Right. So a lot of guys are feeding feed and they're not getting the results they want. And they're saying, I'm feeding this expensive feed. Even if they're feeding mediocre feed, I promise you, if they would add grit to their feed, or I do free choice grit. I just add cups onto the cages. All my cages has got cups with they're zip tied to the cage with holes on the bottom of them. Free choice grit. You will get the most out of your feed, whether your feed is crap, mediocre, or really good. They have to have grit regardless. So if you're not giving grit, guys, or adding it to your feed, there is not an endless supply of grit in the ground, no matter what anybody says. There's not. If that rooster's been in there a long time or you've had chickens in a long time, you need to give them grit. Even if you add it to the feed, you need to do it. So a little grit for you.
Yes, sir. What about chick grit? Says Trigger.
Same exact concept. So I'm guilty of not giving chick grit like I should. So chick feed can be broken down without grit because I've done it for years and years. I did not give chick grit because it's water soluble. I mean, you put chick grit in water, the gizzards still want to work to grind, but they still got to have grit, guys, to get the most out of it. They're not getting the most out of it. They'll get the majority of it, but to get all of it, you got to add chick grit. And with chick grit, I repeat, do not do free choice chick grit for the first 2 weeks of life. Okay? They don't really know what grit is. So chicks 2 weeks old and under will literally fill up on grit because they don't know what it is, and they will develop nutrition deficiencies because they're eating so much grit and they're not eating enough feed. So find the right amount of chick grit, which John can probably tell you the right amount to add to their feed for the first 2 weeks. And after 2 weeks, you can give them free choice grit. They're not as, I don't want to say stupid. They're a little bit older and more mature, and they can understand. But John, do you know the ratio of chick grit to starter?
It's going to be really, really small. I actually probably overdo it. It's going to be something really close to like somewhere between half and a full tablespoon of grit to a pound of feed. And that is not much chick grit to a pound. It's like realistically by weight, it's probably like half an ounce, if that. So when you're talking like mixing feed for adult fowl, grit is roughly 2%, maybe. It's like 25 pounds to a 2,000 pound recipe. So 25 pounds of grit within a whole feed, custom made feed order. So it's not much at all. So literally like 2%. So to a 4-gallon bucket, half of 5-gallon buckets should be around 12 and a half, 13 pounds of feed. So 25-ish pounds of feed to a 5-gallon bucket, 25 to 28. So you'd have to do the math. Let's see. I like math. I like being put on the spot. Let's see. Where is my daggone... Ta-da, there it is. All right. Tables... Actually, no. So, if it's like half an ounce... Come on, calculator. I like this. I like thinking on the spot. 26... So 13 ounces of grit, that's way too much. Way too much. No way. So Where's my calculator? Yeah, like, so 26 pounds of feed. 0, 1, 2, 3. Here. Yeah, it would be like 12 teaspoons, something like that. Not teaspoons, tablespoons. I just want to make sure that I am accurate. Let me double check. Come on, you. Oh, it's not going to do it because that's a hotkey. All right. That's probably really close. Really close. So to a 5-gallon bucket, you might put around half a cup of grit in there. Half a cup. To a full 5-gallon bucket. Half a cup. Relatively. That might be close to 1 pound by weight there, Juan. That might be real close to 1 pound. You'd have to actually weigh it because grit is heavy.
Grit is heavy. So,
Yep. It's somewhere around like 0.4 pounds is what it is. Because I just did the math. It's 0.389 something. And that's to a full 25-ish, 27-ish pounds of feed, which should be a full 5-gallon bucket. So if you're doing half a 5-gallon bucket, you should cut that in half. So grit. Grit is extremely helpful and beneficial to your chicken's life cycle. Chili said he's guilty of not giving grit, to his chicks all the time. Me too. Me too. I'm the nutrition guy. I'm the one that hounds everybody about all this stuff. I've done it too. And I'm sure I'll do it again in the future. It's just part of life. Sometimes we miss the mark. But that doesn't take away from the fact that it is extremely important to your bird's biological function. They have to have it. So having that grit and having that ability to break down that feed to take them to the next level really, really assists in birds that have, guess what? High metabolisms, high activity and energy levels, dense muscle mass, and, they have this requirement for those energy needs to be met. And guess what game fowl have? All those things. All those things.
Yep.
High metabolism, high energy levels and activity levels, and dense muscle mass. Gee, what does that describe? That's our game fowl.
What is the game fowl? What does this comment say? Sorry, guys, just going through the comments here, trying to catch up.
What can I add to my daily feed to get my birds to build weight? Save that question for near the end of the show. Essentially, without answering it completely, literally like really good nutrition. That is, it's no secret. The secret is no secret. Just, you're missing their mark somewhere.
What was he asking?
What can I add to my feed daily to get my birds to build weight?
Well, you can also, can I give another trick? I know it's not better nutrition, but I know how to help them.
Sure.
Cooking oil, vegetable oil, you add fat. So carbs are not fattening without fat. Fat is not fattening without carbs. All chicken feed has carbohydrates already in it. Corn is a carb, milo's a carb, wheat, medlings is a carb. When you add fat to that, you're increasing the calories, right? So it can be absorbed. Carbs and fat makes you gain weight. That's how people diet. The Atkins diet, you cut out your carbs, you eat just meat and cheese, you lose weight. A vegan diet, you cut out your fat, you eat just carbs, you lose weight. Combine the two, you're going to build weight. So just add cooking oil to your feed. I think it's like what I did was half of a bucket of dry feed with half a cup of vegetable oil. Standard vegetable oil from Walmart. Just go get a gallon of it. It's like $8. And you will see them build weight because you're increasing the calories. So calories, guys, is essentially, and John was saying that. He's saying nutrition, but and another way to put it is just calories, increase the calories. So that's an easy way to do it.
Yep, it's true. It'll put a body on them. Now, is it the body you're looking for? It really depends. There's tons of feeds that are low in fatty content. And fats are essential for more than one reason, right? Everybody thinks of fat like it's actual gut fat, like it's a belly, you know what I mean? And that's not always what it is, right?
Right. But I'm saying, even if your roosters don't have a body, people don't understand. A lot of pellets and stuff are fillers, and cellulose does not have any calories. What is that? Cellulose makes up, I can't remember what percent of a pellet that is filler. A lot of them, what is it, John? Like 60% is filler in a pellet? 60% of a pellet is a filler. A filler is cellulose, which is like sawdust or something like that. So a lot of people are saying, well, I'm feeding by weight, but my roosters don't feel like they should. Well, they're not getting the calories they want in that amount. Okay. So
On
increase the
average.
calories.
Yep, you're
There
right.
you go.
On average, pellets as a binder, something to hold the pellet together and keep it stable. Two very, very common ingredients. Okay, one being cellulose, just like you said, which is generally sawdust or plant based fibers, this, that, and the other that are non nutritional. And wheat middlings. And there's a lot of guys that'll look up wheat middlings and they'll say, well, oh, those are nutritious. Yeah, fresh wheat middlings actually, kind of are. But we're getting the companies that are making feeds, they're not buying high quality wheat middlings. They're buying scraps from flour mills. That's what they're doing. They've been bleached and cleaned, and they are just not high quality, things to be binding pellets with. That's why they're cheap. That's why companies are using them. So anyway, common
Right.
common content, 35 to 40% of that pellet. 35 to 40% of it is going to be a binder, which means that by weight, 35ish, 40% of that pellet is wheat middlings or cellulose. That's what keeps it together and keeps it stable. And do you know why? Because game fowl guys, when they open a bag, if they see dust and pellets, broken up pellets make dust, guess what? They ain't gonna buy it. And so they bind those pellets up rock solid where you can throw them at a wall and they won't break.
They would rather feed, a lot of the game fowl community would rather feed a pretty pellet that's whole, me included, okay? Me included, until I learned this, obviously, but would rather feed a pretty whole pellet before they'd open up a bag of dust if the bag of, well, not a bag of dust, but if the pellets are broken up, some of them's crumbled, some of them's broken, but that's a higher quality feed, a better reputation feed. They'd still rather feed a cheaper feed or a different feed, not necessarily cheaper, but a different feed that the pellets are bigger and intact. And really, it's the opposite, guys. They're big and intact because they're like 40% sawdust, some of them 60% sawdust, versus the ones that broke, like a lot of the Kallenbach feed pellets, they break. They don't have as much filler in them. They're mostly nutrition, okay? So don't pay too much attention to the broken pellets in your feed.
Yep. The Kalmbach ones still use quite a bit, but they're on the lower end of the spectrum, 25-ish% up
They
to
are. They're a
near
little bit lower,
30.
but they're still heavy on the filler side. But I'm saying in comparison to a lot of really cheap feeds, they're hitting the mark a little bit better.
Verified. I saw the reports. I saw the nutritional breakdown. I mean, like scientific composition, not analysis, not nutritional. I mean physical composition. What was it made from? It's a very well-known feed manufacturer. Lots of people like it. They will buy it. I'm not going to say their name. There's no point in that. I'm not going down that rabbit hole, okay? I saw the results and everything for myself. Their pellets within their Gamecock feeds were 61.92% wheat middlings. They were binder. 62%. of their pellet was a binder. It is what it is. It's not personal. It's just business. It has to be done. So, we're getting off subject a little bit. We were talking about the gizzard, talking about nutrition, and we went down that rabbit hole.
We're having fun, man. We're having fun.
We're having a good time. So the gizzard does a lot, right? We know what it does, and we're understanding it a little bit more. So, poor gizzard function. Some of the most common signs are going to be loose droppings, undigested grains. You're going to see whole corn and whatnot in your droppings. Also, poor muscle tone, inconsistent weight, and reduced energy are all signs of a gizzard that is not functioning well. Either it itself doesn't function well or it has no grit.
Correct. So, no, you pretty much hit the nail on the head. It's one of the two. But you would be surprised, guys, at how much that plays a role in their overall health. So, don't go. The first thing to do, guys, if you're complaining about your feed, always check the label to see what's in it. But always just throw them grit just to see if that fixes the problem. Since I started giving grit, I'm telling you, I didn't used to give it. I ain't going to lie to nobody. Back, years ago, I would just feed them. I would notice little stuff about my chickens I didn't like. I'd be like, man, they don't have as much energy. Their feathers aren't as this or that. They're not getting anything out of it, right? So it's kind of like old people in an old folks home. They don't have teeth to chew their they don't have teeth to chew their food, so they don't absorb the nutrition because there's not trying to get too much into that stuff, guys, but your mouth is your first form of digestion. So you chew food, you blend up enzymes in your saliva, you swallow it, and that's how nutrition starts to get absorbed. With chickens, it's in the gizzard. There's no grit, which means no teeth. You're not going to absorb things. So first and foremost, make sure you got grit.
Absolutely. That's exactly right. So the negative effects, some of them are kind of hidden. I highly doubt people would consider poor muscle tone or weight, fluctuations, inconsistencies to be gizzard related, right? They're just not thinking that far down the road. So the not adverse, but the opposite side to this coin, the flip side is birds with really strong gizzard activity and high gizzard function are going to digest their grains better, which means they're going to break down their nutrition much more and they're going to absorb more of that stuff. And what's that going to lead us to? It's going to utilize our protein sources better. Our body conformation and composition is going to be maintained better. Energy levels will be better and consistent, So what we're going to do is maintain a better lifestyle and even a better body as far as the chicken is concerned. Southside, we appreciate you requesting in here, but we're running the Chicken Chatter show format, and we're trying to adhere to our timelines and stuff like that. We will have episodes in the future. We'll be more than willing to bring guests in and field a couple of questions, this, that, and the other. Tonight, however, appreciate it, but we're just trying to run our format and meet our timeline.
Yeah, it's not personal. It's literally we're just trying to jump through all these topics before the show's over.
Correct. And we're not going to hit them all. The molt cycle was something that I wanted to get into very heavily. I'm not going to be able to do that, so we're going to cap off these last 20-some minutes with the reproductive system. And so, on that note, let me switch this image out, because I do have an image of a female's reproductive system. I'm gonna find it.
As far as chickens go, so TikTok don't ban us.
Yeah, don't ban us. We ain't doing nothing wrong. Dang you, TikTok. I'm gonna have to. Boy, oh boy.
This is actually interesting.
Yeah, I think it's great. I think it's great. So this is how an egg and whatnot takes place inside of a female. We'll just leave it at that. And then I'll just kind of blow it up and go through the areas where we need to go through as we move forward with that. So, very good info. This information is amazing. Thanks, guys. We really appreciate the support. You guys are awesome. Without you guys, it just doesn't happen. So, I guess furthermore, let's just go ahead and get into a little bit of your female's reproductive system, because the male is relatively simple. I'm gonna knock that out real quick. The testes are hidden inside the body. They're kind of towards the back side of the body, inside that vent area, in the cloaca per se. So the testes produce sperm. There's little tubes that deliver sperm into the cloaca, and the cloaca, it has access to the vent, right? The hole in the butt. There's no other way to put it. So the cloaca is the inside portion. So the rooster will transfer his semen via what's called a cloaca kiss. When he tops your hen, his cloaca touches hers. They exchange the semen and so on and so forth. Life happens. So that's a really simplistic version of the birds and the bees from the male side of things. Right. So
I'm on 1%, so let me try to get to my...
Yeah, sir. If we lose you, you just have to come right back. So, the ovary and the oviduct. The oviduct is basically the stalk of the ovary here. The ovary itself is generally on the left side, I believe. I want to get this information correct before I start sharing it, because that was something that I left. Usually, only on the left side does a full ovary develop for a female, and it contains all the eggs that she will ever lay throughout the course of her life, the yolks, okay? Those are the ova. They're called the ova, and she will have thousands of them stored within her body. So each yolk forms and matures in sequence. Yeah, if she takes it. She can reject him, but he can force himself on it too. Yes, we do. Ryan says he wishes he was as cool as you are, Mr. Chili.
What?
Ryan
Who
Hayes
said that?
Ryan Hayes said he wishes he was cool as you.
Thank you, Ryan. I always knew you looked up to me, son. One day you'll be just like me. Just keep it up.
Trigger had to cut vent feathers back on his one time to get fertile. I've actually had to do that one time this year. I don't know if it made a big difference or if I had too much fat on them. Well, I'm very confident I had the fat off of them. So I'm going to say that it made a significant difference, and I'm convinced. I know that it works. I just haven't had to practice it in the past.
On a side note of nutrition, I'll just ask you on here because I genuinely do not know, and maybe you can answer this before I forget. Maybe it'll help somebody, maybe it won't. I'm not jumping off topic, but it's a quick nutrition question. But what do you do if you have a hen, because I don't even know the answer, picking a rooster's feathers, but her methionine and lysine is exactly where it should be, and you know her nutrition's where it should be. She's in a big pen, but she is eating the rooster up to where he's getting bare. What could be the reason for that?
Stress, overuse of her resources within her body. Maybe he is pushing her around at the feed dish. Those are probably your most likely symptoms.
Okay.
Yep. Boredom, Circle A says boredom, that kind of falls under the category of stress. It's not a form of everybody associates stress with being a really, really bad thing, and it kind of brings them down. Boredom is a form of stress. They have nothing to do. There's no activity. It's mental stress. So, essentially, number one would be stress. The pen's not large enough. she's with him too often. She's with him 24/7. Number two would probably still be nutrition with him pushing her around at the feed dish. Simply not getting her fair share, and her body is going through, needing all that nutrition to produce eggs and so on and so forth. And she's not getting what she needs, even though we think she is because we're feeding her at the same time. See that a lot when chickens are indoors or blocked off from a view of outside. I've never had to combat that, but that makes a lot of sense. That would make a lot of sense. Why do hens eat their own eggs? It's a variety of reasons. It could be nutritional, or it is, learned. If they accidentally break one and they eat it and they decide, "Ooh, this is the greatest thing ever," that's terrible. Nutrition can be corrected. The learned habit is super hard to break.
Yeah, it sucks. I've got all my hens. I got a 20 by 40 grow out pen out there or something. No, it might be. No, it ain't. I was way off. It's a 10 by 20. But all my hens and pullets I didn't use this year, maybe there's 20 of them. I put them all in there. And I've not been gathering the eggs like I should, so they'll just be sitting there and then one to get busted. And then all of a sudden I look and like 5 hens are like chasing one that's got an eggshell in its mouth. And I'm like, man, I'm developing really bad habits this way. So, yeah, once it's learned, guys, it's so hard to freaking break. It really is. It sucks.
It's rough. It's rough.
Somebody said the blood and feathers for what I was saying earlier. I never thought about that. So maybe she's got a taste for blood and she can taste a little bit of it in the feathers.
Absolutely. If she's just picked
That's
some,
a good one.
yeah, if she's picked some out of stress and she's gotten to that blood, like chickens like blood. So that could be a learned habit as well. And just the fact that she's
They
like, hey,
like blood.
they do. They do. If
They love it. Like's not the word.
They will, if you've got several of them in a grow out and they pick on one and one of them rips a tail feather out and it bleeds, he or she is in big trouble.
Show of hands, guys. How many people has ever found a dead chick in a brooder or in a grow out pen or something, and it's literally just a pair of legs attached to like a hollow carcass, and you're like, oh God. one goes down and they all eat it. It's horrible. It really is, but I mean that's chickens for you. Everything like chicken, even chicken.
You don't even smell it because the carcass doesn't sit there long enough to stink. They will clean it in like a day.
Yep.
Can you feed raw meat and is it good? Raw meat is really good for your chickens. Chickens are omnivores, which means they eat both meat and grains and stuff, but I promise you, they lean way harder to the carnivoristic side. 85%.
Oh yeah. You put a bowl of like get you some kiwi, bananas, strawberries, and fruit next to a bowl of hamburger meat or tuna or tilapia or something. Dude, they ain't even gonna look at that fruit. They'll come back to it later. They might peck it once or twice, but once they get a taste of that meat, it's over.
Yes, sir. Not only is it good for them, not only do they like it, but it's loaded with protein sources, fats, amino acids, just so many things your birds need to thrive. I'm going to plug it one more time. We covered that stuff in the ebook. In my ebook, we covered why it's beneficial, what they need to thrive, and if you've never seen it before, you're in for a treat.
Oh, and by the way, if you do feed raw meat, you don't have to, but it's best if you freeze it first and leave it frozen for a while, like solid, because that will help kill not all, but it will kill a lot of parasites that may be in it, any tapeworm eggs, anything like that. So say you do want to give raw hamburger meat or anything like that, just throw it in the freezer for maybe a day or 2 or 3. It don't matter. Just make sure it's frozen and then thaw it out.
Yes, good little
tip. I used to do 72 hours. 72 hours is what I do.
Good little tip.
Yep.
Ta-da!
You can get a lot of info out of these little chicken chatter shows, guys, and we thank you for tuning in.
Certainly do. So, again, the hen's ovary, we have the ovary, and we also have the oviduct. Can't get myself straight. So, anyway, the hen is born with all of the ova, yolks, eggs that she will ever have throughout the course of her life. Usually, only the left ovary ever fully develops inside of your females, okay? And it contains thousands of those future eggs. Each one matures in sequence. When a yolk is released, it enters the oviduct, which is this funnel-shaped portion, right here on the screen that's called the mature oocyte. It's hard for me to pronounce some of this stuff. So it moves down through her reproductive tract where it enters the magnum, okay? The magnum is here in the center, and the magnum is where the yolk starts to become protected with the egg white. Again, nutrition-wise and transcending life, the egg white is formed from different proteins synthesized within the body and salt and water. And so, it's not just about protein for the eggs, guys. Huge difference, okay? You need your trace minerals. You need everything. That's why each piece of the nutritional puzzle has its place. After we leave the magnum, the egg moves into what's called the isthmus. And that is where the shell membrane, the soft portion of the eggshell, forms. Once we're done there, we move down into the uterus area, the shell gland, some folks will call it. And in the uterus and the shell gland area, that is where calcium deposits start attaching themselves to the shell membrane. This is also the part of the body where some pigmentation will occur. Whether your chickens lay white eggs, off-white eggs, like tannish eggs, so on and so forth. That's where all of that stuff occurs as well. So, you can see the vaginal portion of your females here attaches to the cloaca area. The cloaca leads us right to the vent. So, once the egg is fully formed, it passes through the vaginal area and it comes out through the vent. Start off in the ovary section. The egg yolk moves into the oviduct, the funnel, which is technically this word right here, infundibulum. Maybe I was close. I just call it the funnel. Moves in there, goes to the magnum here in the center, forms the egg white, down to the isthmus, forms the shell membrane, and then it goes down into the uterus where it gets its full shell and pigmentation, and then it drops out of the vent via the vaginal portion. That is how your female's reproductive system works. So she accepts the semen through the cloaca, and she also pushes the egg out through the cloaca and then out the vent. Okay? It usually takes between 20 and 26 hours for an egg to form, start to finish. Now, that being said, after one egg is down in the uterus, in the vaginal section where it's getting its calcium, another yolk can be moving through the body. And that's why we get eggs like every day, and so on and so forth. So, talking about stress and so on and so forth, and a little bit of nutrition as it, comes into your chicken's reproductive health and reproductive cycle. because the topic of the show was your chicken's biology. So now that we've covered the reproductive system of the male, which is very, very simple, we're covering the reproductive system of the female. We've got a firm grasp on that now. We need to know what affects their reproductive system. I got a chicken that gives double yolks often. That's, it's good and bad. I like eating double yolk eggs, but
Yeah, a bang for your buck in game fowl. That sucks.
yeah. So reproduction, I would be willing to think a lot of guys don't know this one. Mr. Chili, does the molt have any effect whatsoever on a chicken's reproductive cycle?
So, yeah, chickens typically stop laying during the molt. Correct? Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm just going off of what I know. So, chickens typically stop laying during the molt because their body is less concerned about making good, healthy eggs and embryos, and more or less concerned about replenishing itself, putting blood into the feathers, putting nutrition where it needs to go, so that the health of the chicken is diverted from the embryos and more so and more to the feathers. So that's why when molt happens and they start molting and you do get a few eggs, have you ever noticed you get a lot of culls or a lot more culls? That's because the embryos are not getting, in my opinion, the nutrition and help they need. Same thing with roosters, man. The nutrition's going elsewhere. It's not going to their reproductive system. It's going to their oil glands, their whatever you would call the feather, the hair, skin, and nails in people. I forgot what that system is called in people. In chickens. But yeah, so that's my take on it.
So you are basically hitting all of your marks. Absolutely. Now, there are certain things that happen during molt that folks just don't know. And perhaps, maybe tonight will be the same for you. Because this is something I didn't learn till, I don't know, several months back. And I'm learning much more about it. So, the molt is a time for reset and recycle, and everyone associates the molt with feathers only. Okay? Well, it's much more than feathers, because birds will also lose their body a little bit. That biologically, this is supposed to happen. Okay, so during the molt, Chili was talking about the body redirecting resources to regrow new feathers. He is absolutely 100% correct. Absolutely, nail on the head. It's also doing other things to the reproductive system. Okay, reproductive hormones decline. That means estrogen and fertility, they drop sharply. This affects your fertility. Roosters, their testes, they shrink drastically. When I say drastically, they shrink down to like 35-40% of normal size. Same thing with your hen's ovaries and so on. So when your testes shrink, your sperm production goes way, way down as well. So what does this do? Testosterone's been falling, testes shrink, sperm production's down, so we have reduced fertility. Their desire to mate is much, much less. They're not quite as aggressive. They don't feel as good, so on and so forth. So your females are essentially experiencing the same thing. No estrogen. Their energy levels are going to be a little bit low. Their ovaries have shrunk quite a bit. So fewer of those yolks that they have in their reproductive cycle come out. They slow down and then they completely stop laying. Ovulation comes to a halt. Some of them never do, but for the most part, most of your hens will stop. So reproductive tissues will gradually come back after the molt. And laying and fertility, if we do things correctly, can be better after a molt than they were before they ever went into it. This is the time period for the body to go through this reset cycle and regenerate itself not just with feathers. So it actually physically affects the reproductive cycle, chemically and physically. That was something that I thought was pretty cool and awesome to know. So, protein. We're going to get into nutrition and why it is important for your reproductive system. Protein and amino acids, right? When I talk about protein, I'm not talking about feeding them soybeans and corn and all these plant-based proteins. You need to have a good balanced diet, animal-based and plant-based sources. Guys, aside from soybeans, most of your grains and stuff, well, they do have protein levels, but amino acids, like they have literally like none. Even soybeans. Soybeans are high in protein, but they have no amino acids because they're not an animal. They're a plant. And amino acids are something your birds need to thrive. It is biological. They have to have it. So protein is critical because sperm cells are rich in protein and they need that to thrive and to be at their peak. Egg components like the egg white and certain parts of the yolk, they require protein to form correctly and to make a healthy embryo. Everybody knows feathers are made from protein. I was going to ask, does anybody know which protein feathers are made from? So the important amino acids for your sexual reproductive system on your birds are going to be methionine, lysine, and cysteine. Most folks won't even know what cysteine is. It's an essential amino acid that really helps in nerve system function and part of your reproductive health and things of that nature. Egg development, so on. Big part in egg development. Same as selenium, sort of. Selenium's more of a nervous system thing. So, feathers are mostly keratin protein that is synthesized from your amino acid intake. Keratin is the same stuff that your fingernails are made from and your hair. Our body produces keratin. So methionine plays a huge role in feather production and growth. It also plays a huge role in muscle development, maintenance, and egg production in your females. So your amino acids, absolutely dead nut important. Huge. Deficiencies in your amino acids and protein type and intake. And when we're talking intake, we're not talking percentage. You know why we feed birds by weight? Because protein, fat, and fiber, the ration levels, are measured in weight. That's why. They're supposed to get X amount of grams of protein per day, so on and so forth. The same when we read a nutritional label and we say, oh, this thing's got 120 grams of protein in it. Same deal. Same deal. Doesn't say it's got 10% in it. So, deficiencies from that will cause low fertility, poor hatchability, weak chicks, delayed maturity in your younger fowl. Energy and fat levels, same deal, right? Because obese hens don't produce very good eggs, and fat roosters are often quite lazy, and they don't do a very good job fertilizing their hens. So fats are a big deal. They need energy from fat sources, right, Mr. Chili? But if you overdo it, that will significantly affect your fertility.
Yeah, they do. They need. What was the question exactly? I know they need energy from fat sources.
How does the fat in the diet, so on and so forth, how does it affect your fertility? What happens when you go overboard and your chickens are overweight?
Okay, well, let's start off with the makeup of fat. So, fat is how hormones are made. Okay, fat is how testosterone is made. cortisol, which is a steroid, is made. Fat is how estrogen is made. So fertility is directly correlated with fat. People don't know that because they don't make. Sometimes, guys, your fertility is not where it should be because your fat and your diet is not where it should be, and they can't make the hormones they need. So the body has to have fat, but that's what fat does in the body. Now, with that being said, what it does nutritionally, fat is literally if you overdo fat, if you overdo it, it literally just sticks the fat cells in the body, and it directly affects your rooster's fertility because he can't perform like he needs to. And I don't really know the scientific reason why, but I do know a fat rooster is usually not a very fertile rooster. I don't know what it does to the testes. I don't know why. I just know that fat roosters can't perform or produce like they should. John, do you know the actual reason why?
Yes, I do. Seriously, because fat. When we feed properly, our fat levels will give us energy. Yeah, I mean we already covered that, right? You're spot on with that 100%. So when they're when they're overweight, they're lazy. Their energy levels are low. And so what this does is it affects them hormonally. That's why they're lazy. When you're a teenage boy and you're in high school and you're surrounded by pretty girls, I promise you, you're in pretty decent shape, whether or not you realize it. But you get older, you put on a little bit of weight, and you're not the same guy that you once were, even in the same scenario. So realistically, your hormone output that drives you and gives you sort of an energy boost and things like that, a desire and a nature to procreate, all that stuff is reduced. So, number one, they're obese and they can't physically get themselves into the position where they need to be to transfer the semen, well enough. And number two, hormonally, they're just off balance. So their sperm production is down and their energy levels are down. So that's biologically why they don't produce very well when they're overweight. Same thing with females. When they're overweight, their eggs do not form very well. Their estrogen levels are off. Yep. So
Good answer.
vitamins. Thank you. Vitamins. Vitamin A. People probably wouldn't imagine this one is, if sufficient for your reproductive health, right? The reproductive system, the reproductive tract, sperm production, and egg embryo development. This is what vitamin A does in your fowl. It's essential. It's important for that. So in their reproductive system, vitamin A does a lot more than that. It's one of the big proponents in eyesight, eye development. Makes a huge difference.
Sir.
So vitamin
Retinol
A,
is what it's called.
there you go.
Yep. Vitamin A is, I know it's important in eyesight. And what does it do exactly in eggs? Do you know like the actual purpose of the vitamin A? Because I don't know what it does in poultry.
Embryo development.
Okay.
It sets up for good embryo development, so on. Internally, we're talking about organs and stuff. It helps produce that healthy mucous membrane that encases the heart, the lungs, and so on.
Okay.
Yep. Vitamin
So you're
D.
saying if your chickens have a vitamin A deficiency, it can cause maybe early premature death in an incubator? Do you think that's possible?
Certainly, because it affects directly embryo development. So it's correlated. Right. It's correlated directly with that part of the egg. And this is why I'm such a big proponent of nutrition transcending life. It's like, why do I need to know this? Why do I care? Because if you want your hatch rates to be better and you want more chicks to survive, you need to know what to do.
So you're saying a lot of people, if they have a problem like, hey, my eggs, I've heard this a lot, man, they're all getting to about a week old and they just die. And it's like, I don't know if it's my incubator. I don't know if my humidity's off. I don't know if this or that. Maybe it's the brood fowl. Maybe the hen didn't have enough vitamin A. Maybe she was lacking a certain vitamin and it's directly correlating to the chick's health. So you got to look into it like that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And we covered that in the episode of All About Baby Chicks, where we talked about priming our brood fowl and how essential that is because it translates directly into the egg. So this is just further backing up and going a little deeper into that subject. So vitamin A, essential for embryo development and the rooster's sperm production. So vitamin D. This is probably a common one.
That vitamin D.
Yep. Calcium metabolism. So the body's usage of calcium intake translates into eggshell quality and overall skeletal development. Phosphorus is a mineral that is directly linked to vitamin D and its function of calcium absorption into the body. So everyone thinks, well, she needs eggshells, or not eggshells. She needs oyster shells. Oyster shell, oyster shell. That's the one all fix all. She's not laying. She needs oyster shells. Or her eggs are weird shaped. She needs oyster shells. It's like, hey, I mean, there's so many underlying factors. Sometimes it works. Sometimes you hit the nail on the head, even though you were shooting in the dark. Sometimes you hit something, and it works out. But calcium is only one piece of the puzzle, right? So calcium metabolism, eggshell quality, skeletal development. Vitamin D goes well beyond that as one of the main essential building blocks for your immune system's function and development. Vitamin D is essential to that part of life. How essential on a scale of 1 to 10, Mr. Chili?
Is vitamin E essential to the development of life?
Vitamin D.
Oh, a 10. Vitamin D, not only, people don't know this. Did you know vitamin D also affects nerve development?
Mm-hmm.
It affects nerve health and nerve development. And a vitamin D deficiency also affects their ability to produce certain hormones. So, I'll tell you this, I'll go into more detail with this just before I forget. I know we're talking about the life, but if a rooster is vitamin D deficient, and a lot of people don't know that, and they're not sleeping well, and that people say, oh, chickens don't sleep well. I've seen chickens not sleep well. They'll be up all night crowing, moving around, just not sleeping like they should. And during the day, they'll be in the fly pens or something, just kind of standing there, and people think they're lazy. A lot of times, from what I've seen, you can read into it too. Vitamin D is, if I'm not mistaken, melatonin is made from vitamin D, and melatonin kicks in at night. Melatonin, like I said, it's like the opposite of vitamin D. If you're low on vitamin D, you're low on melatonin, thus your sleep cycle is messed up. Same with people. So that's just a little fun little note. But yeah, if you're vitamin D, if you're deficient in that, guys, the nerves ain't going to develop. There's so much, guys. It affects the skin. It affects everything. Everything with the chicken, how they develop. So
I believe you hit the nail on the head. I'm pretty certain, although I'm not 100%, that vitamin D is correlated with melatonin production. I'm almost for sure. And I learned that from you.
Yeah, during the day, your body soaks in vitamin D and it essentially shuts it off at night and starts producing melatonin from the vitamin D. So I think it's the same thing in chickens, actually. I'm like 99% sure it is. So yeah, it's also a thing how nutrition transcends everything. If your nutrition's not where it should be, you're going to notice things and you're not going to know why they're doing what they're doing.
Exactly. And then, so here we are talking about the females and the male's reproductive cycle and learning about, how this vitamin and this vitamin affects these things reproductively, but it also has even higher functions elsewhere within biology. So that's why this stuff is important. Vitamin E is an important antioxidant type vitamin and is responsible for. By the way, this one is always, always low on your feed tags, guys. Vitamin E is always around 20 or 30 on your feed tags, and it should be, for a breeder feed, should be close to 80 or 100, 80 or 100 international units or units per pound, however they measure it. 80 to 100. Minimum should be around 60. Minimum. And most of your feeds, you read your tag, they're going to be 20 or 30. Significantly missing your vitamin E mark, which is responsible for sperm viability. What does that mean? The life cycle, the life of the sperm, the semen. So they will live longer. They will be healthier. Even though their life cycle is short, they will get the maximum potential, out of their life cycle. Hatchability. That's a big one. Big one, big one. Okay, so that translates directly into your eggs having higher hatch rates because they're forming for that reason. Reproductive tissue health is another big one. Vitamin E helps to maintain that reproductive system. So it helps with sperm and their life cycle, keeping them, vigorous, and their viability, their life viability, and then hatchability, translating into better hatch rates in your eggs. Who wouldn't want that?
Right. And I know we're talking about reproduction, but also, guys, vitamin E, it has another important thing. I know it's a powerful antioxidant, but John, if I'm not mistaken, doesn't it have a lot to do with the neurological, the function of the nerves and development as well?
It plays a role in the nervous system and its growth and development and whatnot. It works in conjunction with a lot of your B complex vitamins and things to get that done.
The
But your B vitamins are significantly more responsible for that than is vitamin E. But vitamin E does play a role in the nervous system's growth and development, and it's important on multiple levels. Multiple levels.
so, what do you think about as far as reproduction goes? There was a guy who argued with me and told me a game fowl hen, cannot physically produce 2 eggs a day. He said it is not in her system. She can't do it. Her body can't do it. What do you say to that?
That's a load of BS. I mean, I've seen it with my own
You're
eyes.
muted. You're muted, John.
Ah, I said that's a load of BS. I've seen it physically with my own eyes. I mean, I don't sit there and watch them lay, but they're the only ones in there, and I've seen it multiple times. The guys that think that that never happens or it can't happen, I mean, poultry will do that from time to time. But the guys that think that that's just not possible haven't fed their chickens good enough to see it. And
Right.
that's part of the reason, because it's not just the feed that makes them lay, but the point of us talking about these vitamins and what the reproductive system has linked to it that they need is when you miss those marks and your reproductive system is underdeveloped and it never does develop, guess what? They never produce like they could have.
True.
If their reproductive system only gets to roughly 70-ish% function, then you're missing 3 eggs for every 10 that you would be getting. And that's big for some of us. But seriously, in all seriousness, I mean, it makes a huge difference. The B complex vitamins, support metabolism, nervous system growth and development, and the formation of the embryo within the egg. So that's a reason nutrition is important. when it comes to the reproductive cycle and what that brings to the table. Now, daylight strongly affects the reproductive cycle because it stimulates hormones. And so the daylight cycle, that's why we run lights to get them to hatch earlier and so on and so forth. Because the daylight cycle stimulates the pituitary gland and the female's brain goes, okay, it's time for me to start reproducing. And so it activates her ovaries and she starts to move eggs throughout her body. So, with all this being said, this is kind of just a little footnote to attach. All of these things that go hand in hand with the reproductive system are extremely important because if you miss out and your reproductive system is underdeveloped, you're not going to have very good production for your next generation's offspring, using those birds. Genetics play a difference in your fertility, your breeding tendencies, the molt cycle. Like some breeds handle the molt better than others, some don't. Egg production, fertility, all that stuff translates genetically as well. So you got to give them everything they need, and they got to be good bred chickens. So overall, in summary, nutrition strongly affects growth and development and sexual maturity. Okay? It affects fertility, hormone production, hatchability, recovery after the molt cycle, and long-term reproductive capacity. That is why it's important to understand their reproductive system, understand why we should meet our nutritional requirements, and what it will do for us in the future by doing so. Those are big ones.
Yep.
So the reproductive cycle is affected from nutrition and the molt. The molt is a great time to reset your reproductive cycle. You want to learn more about it, learn how to handle it, learn how to feed it properly, and don't go throwing them protein the minute you see a feather hit the ground. You're doing it wrong.
No, and I know that don't go with this episode, but one day we need to talk about the molt feed that you just want to do, the molt plan, and that'll be coming up. We'll do an episode on that the closer it gets to molt.
Yep, we will absolutely do an episode about the molt. I had that as part of a section for this episode, but all the information stretched out way too long.
Yeah.
So it's been a good one. We are certainly at time. I'm a little over because I had connectivity issues and started the 2-hour show.
Me as well.
And
I got on at 8:20. So.
Yeah, that's about when we were able to get it to stabilize. We're at 2 minutes and 7 seconds. Or 2 hours, 7 minutes. 2 hours, 7 minutes. So, with that being said, that's it. That's what we got for you on chicken biology and how it affects the life cycle of your birds and why it's so important. Is there anything you'd like to add to us, Mr. J. Chili?
No, sir. Just I'm pretty sure we covered everything. Like I said, I wanted to do a molt, but we will do a whole episode on the molt. So yeah, as far as everything goes, I'm pretty sure we covered and touched everything.
Yes, sir. I believe we hit our marks. I think we did very well. I think it was a good show. We worked around the technical issues, and we got her done. Provided some usable information to those that were willing to listen. And of course, like always, this episode will be uploaded to YouTube in the near future, where you can rewatch it, or if you missed it, you'll be able to tune in.
Correct. So we appreciate everybody who watching. Check out our Chicken Chatter YouTube channel, Chicken Chatter 247. This episode will be uploaded on there. We appreciate all of you, and we will see everybody in 2 weeks.
That's right, guys. All of you take care of yourselves. God bless each and every one of you. I hope that he looks over and watches and blesses you and your families, and especially, yourself there, Mr. Chili. And it's been a ride, and we're thankful for each and every one of you, and we're certainly blessed to be here and be able to do something like this.
Absolutely. I'll lead us out in prayer right quick, and we will go. Thank you, God, for everything you've done for us. Thank you for everybody who's watched this Chicken Chatter episode. Your phone's ringing, John. But we want to thank you, Lord, for everything you've done for us. Just go with us this week and help us through this upcoming week. Watch over each and every one of you. We appreciate everything you have done for us. Thank you so much. In the name of your Son, Jesus. Amen.
Very good.
All right, guys.
Amen. Thank you very much for that.
Yes, sir. All righty, guys. We'll see you guys in 2 weeks.
Thanks, guys. Take care. Y'all be good. Stay safe. Bless all of you. We'll see y'all next time.